Welcome to Lifting Leaders Podcast, where we are unleashing leader possibilities to make a better world. I'm Crystal Roberts, and together with Trisha Ryan, we're diving deeper into some of the complexities of the world's most critical challenges and exploring innovative ways of navigating through them.
Through interviews with experts and leaders just like you, we're exploring what it takes to thrive as a leader today and examining new ways of thinking about how to creatively lead into a more equitable, socially responsible, and sustainable future. And the future starts now.
Hi, Lifting Leaders Podcast listeners. Welcome back. Today, we're continuing our special series focused on coaches and how their work helps to make a better world. This is our last guest interview in the series. It's our capstone.
As many of you know, both of us are certified leadership coaches through the Hudson Institute of Coaching and professional certified coaches through the International Coaching Federation.
What you might not know is that our passion for coaching and its positive impact on others led us to join the ICF Washington State Chapter Leadership Board. This year, I'm honored to serve as the president, and Trisha is the director of volunteer services.
Over the past several years, we've met some truly amazing coaches. Their diverse and impactful work has inspired us so much that we wanted to showcase just a few of these incredible individuals.
Some of these coaches we've met through our work with ICF Washington, and others through associations like Hudson. We hope you find their stories as inspiring as we do.
What we know for sure is that if you utilize your strengths, follow your passion, and keep service to others as a guiding principle, you can make a positive difference in the world no matter what career you choose. And a good career coach can certainly help with that.
That's for sure. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming two incredible leaders from the Hudson Institute of Coaching back to our podcast.
Mm-hmm.
They have each been guests on our show before, but not together. Hudson is one of the early leaders in the field of coaching and has been providing developmentally based coach training for leaders for about 40 years. They set the standard for experiential learning programs that lead organizations and people to reach for their best as leaders and human beings in our global world. Trisha and I are a little biased.
Yeah, we are.
As we said in the intro, we are both Hudson certified coaches. And I also work as a coach for Wiser, a Hudson company. And we are feeling a little starstruck today. First, we have Dr. Pam McLean, the co-founder and chief knowledge officer of Hudson, who has been the driving force, along with her late husband, Frederick Hudson, of the company's vision and innovation for more than 40 years. Joining her is her son, Michael Hudson, the CEO of the Hudson Institute of Coaching, who has been leading the company to new heights with his strategic vision and leadership. We're excited to have them both here to share their insights on coaching for a better world. Here's a little more about each of them before we dive into our questions. Dr. Pam McLean is a leading expert in coaching, transformational learning, and adult transitions. With a background in clinical psychology, she embraced coaching during its early days and has spent 4 decades advancing the field. As Chief Knowledge Officer and co-founder of the Hudson Institute of Coaching, Pam is even more passionate about the profound impact coaching can have. She is the author of several acclaimed books, including the completely revised Handbook of Coaching, which explores evidence-based coaching methodologies, Life Forward, a guide to navigating life transitions, and Self as Coach, Self as Leader, which examines the deeper work of developmental coaching. Pam's work continues to shape the field, driving meaningful change for coaches and leaders alike.
Michael Hudson is the CEO at Hudson Institute of Coaching. Michael has over 10 years of experience in the social impact sector, including heading up new country expansion at One Acre Fund and leading a research team at Anjan University in the Mekong Delta. Michael's work focuses on evolving coaching to fit the needs of our changing world. He believes coaching is needed now more than ever. Michael has a bachelor's degree in anthropology from Colby College, a master's degree in organizational psychology from INSEAD, and is a Hudson certified coach.
On a personal note, both Trisha and I agree with a client of Hudson's that I was recently working with who said, "When I grow up, I want to be just like Pam."
Yes.
Pam is a kind, compassionate, grounded, smart, and fierce human being, and an extraordinary coach. My coach colleagues and I never miss an opportunity to learn from Pam and watch her coach. It truly feels like magic. Michael, who I was fortunate to go through the coach certification with, is humble, thoughtful, also incredibly intelligent, and cares deeply for others and for healing the world. Going through the Hudson certification program and being a part of the Hudson community is one of the things I am truly grateful for in my life.
I am too.
Welcome, Pam and Michael. So happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes. Anything that you would like to say before we jump in?
Just great to be here with you.
Yeah, a total honor. Thank you.
Thank you both.
So we've slightly shifted our normal first question, which is tell us your story, into more of a coaching question that I hope that you'll love. What's most important for us to know about you right now? And Pam, if you could start, followed by Michael.
Well, that's a deep question. I could go in many directions, but I would say that in the year 2024, one of the things that has been most important and a teacher in my life is a cancer journey that I have been on. And I have spent, since last fall, time managing surgery, chemo, radiation, all that goes along with a cancer journey. And I have worked to embrace cancer as a teacher. And what it has taught me has been significant. Perhaps, like everyone, I know we're not here forever, but I didn't think about it very much. I didn't get much consideration. And I remember getting that diagnosis and finding myself being shocked this could be happening, right?
Yeah.
Shocked at the possibility of what might unfold. And in the end, what I would say I have learned is, first of all, definitely I've learned to understand what people mean by mortality awareness, and that's a good thing, I think. But I have really focused my energy on what matters to me now at this time in my life and how I want to be spending my time. And I am coming through the other side of this journey with a whole lot of gratitude, So that's me today.
So glad that you're feeling better, and that you, as you said, sort of feeling on the other side of that journey. Yeah. Grateful. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, Pam's my mom, and so that was a pretty big deal for me too.
Yeah.
And I would say we were all complicit in that fantasy that she was going to live forever. And so that was pretty destabilizing for a while. I think this relates to that, though. Most important thing to know that doesn't show up in my bio is that I'm a dad. I've got 2 little kids, and it's like my whole world. I go to work and then I go home, and they have been my teachers. So Percy is he just turned 4 in October. He's named after him.
It's been that long.
So Percy, and then Audrey, she turns 2 in December. So they're amazing, and they're like joy in a bottle, and they're also so challenging. It's so humbling because, and I think there's so much that relates to coaching, and I wrote about this at some point, but you just never really feel like you know exactly what's happening, and the goalposts are constantly moving, and so you just, as far as I've learned so far, just kind of try to stay present and there for them, and keep your mind open and your heart open. And so anyway, that's been the most important thing in my life, the kids. And then the thing that does show up in my bio, but that's very important for me, is just like the global nature of this world. I view the world in that way, that we live in a global community, and I have had this great fortune of being able to live in different places over the course of my younger years, and so I think that's just really important, and especially when you look at all the things going on with politics around the world. I think like we can look for opportunities for leadership and bringing people together and dividing a little bit less, because I think we're more connected than we like to pretend sometimes.
Wow, that's interesting way to look at that too. I mean, there are so many people right now who are struggling to figure out where they stand on this earth, given all of the things that are going on. And, I love that you're looking at that as an opportunity to, kind of embrace the, what are the possibilities? What can we do with this? That's beautiful.
Yeah. At no time, at least in my lifetime, do we need to be coming together and not walking away. I agree. It's just so important. There's such big issues in the world that we can't be divided at this point, but it's going to take a lot of work together. Yeah.
And open ears to hear the messages, right? Yeah.
And open hearts.
Yes, hearts for sure. So in your latest article, Rethinking Leadership, or paper, Michael, you make a case that we need new models of leadership. I would like both of you to answer this question. Michael first. Why do we need new models of leadership that go beyond traditional leadership development models? And why is this important now? And I have a feeling that your previous response might have a little bit to do with it. But
yeah, I mean, so I have the great pleasure at Hudson of building on the shoulders of decades of work, right? So, I wrote that white paper, but it leverages everything that this organization has produced and learned over those decades. I think there's two things that come to mind for me. First of all, uncertainty in the world is there's more uncertainty now than there ever has been, and it seems to be accelerating. We could use a term like VUCA or BANI or whichever one of these acronyms feels best. But for me, it's uncertainty is kind of at the heart of it. We don't feel like we know exactly where things are going to be tomorrow, next week, next month. And if you put that into the organizational context where a lot of leadership development takes place, I think the same is true. You have layoffs and you have people who are still in the company wondering, how do I turn this thing around? You have strategies shifting overnight. What organization have you met in the past year that is not doing a reorg? Right?
That's true.
And so uncertainty is just like up there on the big billboard blinking. And I think that the truth is leadership development, there have been really great thinkers in leadership development. So it's not that there's a dearth of creative thinking there. But I think that organizations have really overemphasized technical skills. We want to teach people technical skills so that they have something that is concrete. And technical skills have a place. But if we over-index on that, then people are rigid and inflexible in the face of uncertainty. They can't adapt. They're not resilient. And then I think in addition to the things that we're teaching, like focusing too much on technical and not enough on the human, I think there's the way that we teach in organizations in most cases is pretty dated. So, classroom formats, LMSs, these sorts of things, a lack of experiential and a lack of learning in the flow of work. And so I think that the pedagogy, or andragogy as we typically call it at Hudson, where we're really learning in an adult learning format, I think there's a lot of growth opportunity for organizations to adopt that so that the good ideas that are being written about can actually be adopted.
Yeah, I would add that these are wild times that we're living in. And the sense of what's ahead has never been as unclear as it is today. And so what's required of a leader is very different than in our far more predictable world of the 60s and 70s and at other times. And one of the things that we pride ourselves in at Hudson is being linked all of our work to the fields of study that are most relevant to the field of coaching. And so one of the theories of development that we often return to is that of Robert Keegan, who is at Harvard. And you know, in his initial writing on how adults develop, if you remember, in his trajectory of those levels of development,
right.
he had this abysmal, 3% of us got to that self-transforming.
Mm-hmm.
But when I look at it today, I think about how super relevant that work is to the world we're living in today. That today it is not sufficient to be what he calls self-authoring, and it's certainly highly insufficient to live with a playbook that we developed as kids and dragged into our adult years. Mm-hmm. But we need leaders who can see from many perspectives, and leaders who understand that leadership is not a solo job. It's highly, highly relational, and just as Michael says so well, that we have accentuated some of the tactical skills at the expense of human skills that are in the world we're living in today needed more than ever. Because when you talk, Michael, about the who hasn't known someone or been very close to or perhaps experienced themselves a layoff recently, right? Mm-hmm. The sense of psychological safety is simply not as present as it once was.
Yeah.
So how do we as leaders embrace the human skills at a time in history where things aren't nearly as predictable as they were? People are very anxious. Mm-hmm. People are, we read about how people are so isolated. People are feeling very isolated. And so how do we create the conditions for people to learn and grow and be engaged? That's particularly challenging work.
Yeah, and I just add it. I think that the dominant model for leadership that we see in organizations still looks like the leader's job is to know the plan and then to execute the plan downward. And so if that leader in that model is doing a good job, then they're explaining the plan clearly, and they're helping people comply with the rules of that plan, right? And this is just not what works in the world anymore. It's right. Old. I don't know if it ever worked, but it definitely doesn't work now. And I think it's now what we're talking about in this framework of developmental leadership is a leader's job is not to know everything. Mm-hmm. A leader's job is to help a team, help a group discover what they don't know, because that's how we evolve, right? Especially in the context of that uncertainty. We are curious and innovative and always changing. And so the top-down model is too rigid for this context now.
I'm sitting here listening to this, and I'm an internal coach. And I think to myself, I have built a career around this because it hasn't ever worked. I mean, you're absolutely right. I've worked for major organizations, and I have seen them try to navigate on foundations that I think are solid in my OD background or my IO psychology background. I think they're solid, sound, foundational concepts and principles and things, and yet they're not easily understood, I think, in an organizational setting, and often they get it wrong. And so they go off and they start building processes, protocols, or whatever, and people become employees become those almost complacent people that just say, "What do you want me to do today, boss?" Because they're not encouraged, they're not engaged, and so people like me who are in organizational effectiveness, I spend a lot of time coaching and doing different kinds of skill building or whatever programs that I try to not follow a model, because I'm noticing that my employees or the people that are my clients are not really embracing it. And I'm wondering if part of that, you were talking about Keegan, and I was thinking that's a foundation for me, one of the foundations. And I wonder of all of those amazing thought leaders and people that did set the foundation for OD in the past. Edgar Schein, I love that man. And we don't hear anything about it now because our generations that are, entering the workforce now, a lot of them have never been exposed to it. And I'm not even sure they'd know where to find that. So I'm just throwing that back because I'm just wondering, how you might react to that, to my reaction to you.
Yeah. Well, we're big Edgar Schein fans for sure, and when you think about the first of all, the breadth of contribution he made to the field, pretty stunning.
Yes.
But two books that come to my mind: Humble Leadership.
Yes.
It says it all.
Humble Inquiry.
What was that? Humble Inquiry.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, I've tried to mistitle his book.
Well, maybe you just have a new book on your mind.
I think that's an opportunity
I think
right
there's
there.
actually one out there called that.
But what I have always been struck by with his work is that it seems so simple and yet it's so difficult.
Yes.
So one of the things that Michael and I experience a lot in the folks that we work with, which runs the gamut of senior leaders and execs to folks who are on the front lines, is this TIME thing. I don't have any time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have time to take a different approach. And so, when he talks about how if we simply asked more questions as leaders, it would change the way we interact with one another. But there is such a sense that the way I add value, and by the way, I'm in a hurry, the way I add value, especially when I'm in a hurry, is to just tell you what to do.
Right.
Yeah.
You bring an issue, and I go, well, I have a solution for you.
Yeah.
And so that kind of ensures that we're setting up a system where I say, just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do, right?
But the
Yeah.
time wasted on the other end of that, trying to fix what didn't work, it's like, oh, okay, that's why you don't have any time.
Well, and I think like Michael
Right.
was saying that there's so much change happening so rapidly. We can't know. The leaders cannot know everything that they have to know that's going on, that we have to rely on our people to know what's the right path forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the throwback to Shine, though, because, this idea of learning in organizations has been going on for a long time, right? Like the concept of a learning organization was that from the 70s, maybe earlier? It's been around for a very long time.
Yes.
And many brilliant people have worked to instill some of these qualities in organizations, but I think that the truth is it's really hard to find organizations that are good models of that. And so what's that about? That's kind of what triggered our work around this developmental mental leadership model is, what is that gap between, there's some good ideas there and there's such low adoption. So part of it, one way into that is a lot of the models are quite complicated. A lot of brilliant leadership models are pretty complicated. So we made an effort to come up with something that is simple and elegant. But anyway, I think it's worth being curious about. A lot of great ideas, but low adoption.
Yeah. And I think that time issue that you were talking about, simple and elegant, is really going to be the path forward for people to be able to adopt it and integrate it and actually use it. Simple and elegant. Yeah. Otherwise, their attention span is just so short these days. They won't invest in figuring it out. Yeah. Good stuff. So, Michael, you propose a paradigm shift towards developmental leadership, just as we were talking about. So you state that the outcomes of developmental leadership are increased organizational performance. So this works, right? Increased organizational performance and a more humane and adaptable workforce. Things that, of course, we would all want. What is developmental leadership, and why is this the answer now? And then a follow-on to that will be, can you share with us some of the pillars of your blueprint?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one way to think about developmental leadership is, and we also are calling it everyday development as well. These are sort of synonymous for us. But one way to think of it is equipping a critical mass of people in an organization, ideally everybody, if you could imagine, just equipping every single person in an organization with the building blocks of the coaching toolkit. So sort of
Wow.
letting go of a methodology or a process, but equipping them with mindset, listening, inquiry, empathy, and helping them to build some habits to leverage those building blocks. But thinking about habits as opposed to a methodology is very important here, because a methodology is really a lot of work. I mean, we all know that, right? To learn
Yes.
to use a methodology, we can make it simple, but even so, that's something to get over. And so we've come up with a framework that is quite easy to adopt, quite easy to train on, and it equips people with this ability to develop others in the flow of work. So, and it's not a hierarchical thing. It doesn't have to be I'm the manager, you're the report, and I'm develop everybody. This is why we say critical mass of people should be trained on this. And what really excites us is this first idea of micro development. So, if we have enough people in on the game, then we can have these 5-minute, 10-minute micro development interactions between people every single day. And that is very exciting. If you add up,
Yes.
if everybody's having one of these per day and you add it all up, the total hours of development would dwarf any other strategy that you could come up with for engaging in development in organizations. The point that Pam makes about time, I think this is also really compelling. We're not telling people to go to a classroom or to go into an LMS and read articles or watch videos. We're saying you can actually continue doing your work, and you don't have to have additional conversations. You just have to have them with a different intention. And so it's dovetailed. It's in the flow of work, and I think that is what organizations need right now, is in the flow of work. I think, there are certain organizations that have embraced an apprenticeship model for a long time, and I think that in some ways this is a newer way of thinking about that. And then final thing I'll say is, so we initially arrived at this model because of the opportunity it presented for development. But then as we started to look at it and look at examples of work that we've done in organizations with this, we started to realize that it's actually about a lot more than development. Because when you have a critical mass of people embodying these skills, you actually get a lot of other stuff. So you get psychological safety. People can say what's really going on. You have the courage to call out the thing that you notice. You're not sure if you might get in trouble for speaking up about it. That's actually really important for performance. You get creativity, because people are allowed to bring their own ideas and color outside the lines a little bit. So all of these other things, if you think about these business challenges, real tough business challenges that are showing up in the landscape these days, I think a lot of them, these skills are sort of foundational to addressing those in a healthy way. So that's where we're at right now with our thinking.
I love the idea of having, short learning moments. It's pretty much, it takes care of the time issue for sure, but I think it also sticks with people. It's a moment. It's like when you have joy. It's fleeting. It's just a moment, but you remember it because it was impactful. I think short snippets of learning can be that way too, especially if it's something profound or enough of a difference that it makes you think about it a little bit. It's like that song you can't get out of your head, right?
Yeah, and I will add, I don't see this as a replacement for coaching. It's not a substitute for coaching. It's a complement. These are things that should be happening. They can be happening every day for everybody in an organization, and it will accelerate everything that's happening. However, when people are engaged in a transition or a promotion or a really tough situation, formal coaching is a whole different medium that remains really important.
Yeah, and I think it also can be a support to that.
Yes.
So yeah, it's sort of like the wrap up of some of that and the reflection and going a little deeper on that. Yeah.
There is a sort of need to learn how to learn in different ways than we have in the past. If you think about the traditional ways that we have the kind of the old style pedagogical style of learning. Someone dictates their notes, and then you take notes, and so we absorb what is given to us. But today we know that old style is no longer sufficient, and that learning happens in relation to one another. It's sort of like if I come to you with a problem and you tell me what I should do to solve it, I really haven't learned a lot. Mm-mm. I really haven't learned a lot. I have a plan now for how to do this, as you told me to do it, but I have not absorbed anything myself. I have not thought this through for myself. And there's not a sense of agency in this.
Right.
And so I think that learning how to learn differently, knowing the power we have in the questions we ask, that is really something. So I come to you and say, I have no idea what to do with this situation. And instead of you telling me what you would do, you say, well, let's talk about how you're thinking about it. And in that very shift, we're empowering someone and asking someone to give this more consideration and to grow into a possibility. I think the other one, and I think, Michael, you would have some things to say about this as well, is that we have to cultivate cultures of not knowing. We take a lot of pride in knowing and being very certain about what we know. But in the world we're living in today, it's not working as well, right? Because we simply can't see what's ahead on the road the way we predictably could in the past. So if we hang on to what we've known, as a leader, we could find ourselves in precarious places. And yet it is uncomfortable to be in a not knowing place. It's uneasy to sit in a lot of ambiguity. We have to, in many ways, we have to know ourselves a whole lot better than we used to need to as leaders today.
Yeah, and I think, we just had this conversation with another coach who's a millennial, Melissa Castro, and this is what the millennials and the Gen Zers are calling for. Mm-hmm. They don't want people telling them what to do. They want to discover it for themselves, and it builds, like you said, so much empowerment, but also confidence, and sort of validates people for their humanity. It's such a win-win.
Yeah, they really want to have their voices heard, and I think that it's about time. I don't think we've ever had generations before who ever stood up to that, and it's actually kind of exciting in a business setting to see that happening right now. It's a little uncomfortable for people who are seasoned and have not had that happen before, but I think it's doing some good for our business anyway, the one I'm in.
Yeah.
It's testing thinking, and it is actually starting to take hold, which I really like. I like seeing that.
Yeah. And Tricia, it goes back to what you were saying earlier of, the old style employee shows up at work. What am I doing today, boss? Or whatever it is. But the new style, if every employee can take ownership over their role.
Yes.
Understand how they're connected to the mission of the organization and the purpose. For me as a leader of an organization, that's a dream. You're going to move faster. You're going to be more cohesive.
Yes.
You're going to be more creative. And so I think, from the old style to the new style, there's a lot of work to do, but I think there's just a ton of upside in embarking on that evolution.
Yeah.
I love that you said that. To me, I look at that as the door opening to innovation, because we have people who have amazing ideas and they never get their voice heard. And so this is really kind of, throwing the spark at them and saying, we want to hear it. We want you to do that, right? It's amazing.
Well, yeah. And I think that growth mindset is so important in that process, because sometimes I think when I talk with leaders about this, they're like, oh yeah, this makes sense. I'll do it. And then the first time that a mistake is made, it's like,
Yes.
whoa, I guess I didn't, I trusted him too much. It's like, I can't go down that path anymore. It's like, oh, no, that's part of the learning. It's part of the development. How can you help them to
and
regain
it's like,
that?
what is the scaffolding internally to support a growth mindset?
Yeah.
So
right.
it has to be that we can fail as long as we take it apart and learn from it, and push those learnings forward. We can ask for input. We must ask for input on a regular basis. And providing input is seen as supporting someone's growth. So it really is a kind of a paradigm shift in how an organization operates if they're going to be committed to the development of their people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and teaching people that feedback is not something that is, ending a conversation or your career. It is something that's helping you grow, and it's helping the organization in the process.
Yeah. Michael?
I was going to add, I think you see a lot of examples of organizations that are doing skills training or manager as coach or something like that, but the mindset's not there as a foundation. Mindset and the norms around the mindset are not there. And I think when that's the case, things don't stick because people, they don't believe it, and the system hasn't demonstrated that it's okay to do those things.
Yeah. So what would you say are the mindsets that they need to have?
I mean, I think so. When we're talking about primarily a developmental skill set, right? And so people need to believe. This seems really, really basic, right? But people need to believe that other people can grow in their capacity.
Yeah.
Right? Like we actually have to believe that that's a viable way to solve work problems.
Yeah.
And not just a viable way, but maybe the best way or the most effective way in some situations, right? Like it needs to be something that people really genuinely buy into. So I think a 1 hour training on growth mindset, it's going to work for the enthusiasts, but you're going to have everybody who's skeptical is still going to be skeptical at the end of that.
Yeah.
What is the work that we need to do to actually believe in the growth mindset? And I think about our 9-month coach certification program. When people start there are a lot of business leaders, experienced, accomplished business leaders who are not so sure about this thing, Yeah. The first 3 months, maybe, they're not so sure about this thing. They're thinking, oh gosh, really, I actually do know the answers for most things. And so why would I not? And it takes months, not just of learning, but of practice and getting feedback and sort of seeing how things go, for them to start to realize, wow, there is a different way. There is a reason to build a new muscle. And so I think that's what it's about. Building maybe consensus is too ambitious, but building a critical mass around this idea that this is a way that is probably the most effective way in a lot of situations. And if we can have that, then people will try it, and people will be forgiven for making mistakes or encouraged to make mistakes in some situations or whatever it is. But without that, I think everything else is cart before the horse.
Yeah.
Right.
I think, and I know we got to go to our next question, but one of the things that this is bringing up for me too is, so not a commercial here for Wiser, but
here we go.
One of the things that I found so cool with group coaching is through the Wiser program is that when you have some people who may be a little farther down the journey than other people around that, having that credibility of of a manager to say, oh, I tried it and here's the cool thing that I found. And then all of a sudden, people are like, ooh, tell me more about that. And maybe I should try that. And it's kind of this snowball effect where I feel like when they hear it from a peer, somebody else who's tried it and it's worked, they're much more likely to adopt it.
There's your critical mass, right?
Yeah.
At its finest. Anne, I'm going to start you out on this one. We know that the number of coaches has really dramatically grown over the last 10 years. We also recognize that coaches have many different specialties, and we've spoken to a few of them on this particular series that we're doing right now on coaches, Coaching for a Better World. For this discussion, though, we're focusing on coaches who provide coaching to leaders, people in formal leadership roles, because we believe everyone is a leader. What role do you see coaches playing in helping to move leaders into this new paradigm shift of developmental leadership? And how is this different from teaching managers basic coaching skills? Are there benefits to both?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there are benefits to both, and I think the paradigm shift is that when we're coaching leaders, it's very different than mentoring or consulting or counseling, any of these things, right? We're helping people land on maybe small changes that are important for them, their team, and their organization. So we're helping to land on that, knowing that this is relational work and it's an inside-out job. Mm. So a coach, no matter what the specialty is, a coach must be equipped with a thorough understanding of how change happens. How does this happen for us human beings? We could talk about how do we reshape habits? How do we notice, how do we see our blind spots, what's in the shadows that others can see in us but we haven't seen? And so, the work of a coach, I think, to be really great requires some courage. Coaching is not a comfy, cozy situation where it's like chatting with a friend. Coaching is helping somebody make a shift that they haven't been able to make on their own, where the stakes are high enough that it really matters for them to take this on. And it is tough work. We all have whatever we might want to call this. We have the scripts that we grew up with, or the narratives that emerged out of our culture and our family systems. I have to play it safe, or good for me to be the one in the lead, or I'm going to stand on the sidelines and then come. Whatever it is that we adopted when we were growing up to survive and hopefully thrive, we drag into our adult years and it becomes invisible to us. And generally speaking, when we're working with leaders, there's some element of that is at play for them. The leader that really hits the numbers very well every time and has the hardest time with relationships with their people, right? Yeah. And hasn't really noticed that, doesn't really see that. Our work as a coach is how do we help them see that which has been invisible so that they can, over the course of a period of coaching, really take that old habit apart and pivot it so that the way they show up changes who they are. This is important work for a leader. It's both Michael and I are very keen on some of the work of Manfred Ketz de Vries. He was a professor of yours, I think, at INSEAD, Michael. But he says, look, to be a leader in the world today, we have to understand our internal landscape. And many a leader is very unacquainted with their internal landscape.
Because we focused on the technical.
Because we focused on the.
It's just brittle. It's brittle when you get down to it. Yeah.
It's easy to, focus on those things that you learned, those skills you learned to do your job well, as long as you don't have to put the personal in there. You don't have to be vulnerable. You don't have to, show up in a way that shows people that you're human too, right? You actually, it's hard to inspire though if you don't have that.
Yeah. But not impossible to learn.
That's true.
Not impossible to learn. As long, in the Gestalt world, they have this phrase, awareness is self-correcting. When we become aware of something, we have a chance of pivoting this, right? Mm-hmm. If it's not in our awareness, nothing's going to change.
Mm-hmm. So that's where I guess 360s come in sometimes too. If a person's not able to see it in just talking with a coach or something, sometimes it takes, I don't know,
yeah,
maybe.
I think you're spot on because, we cannot coach in a vacuum. Because if I'm coaching you and we're coaching in this solo endeavor, we are missing all kinds of information. And so we change, we grow, and we learn in relation to others. So when we go around and talk to maybe 6 or 8 people in your sphere, people above, below, peers, and we say, so, what's one small shift that you might make that would make a big difference? Generally, some theme emerges out of that is often a surprise to the leader. I had no idea. I've never heard that before. Wow, that really is a gut punch. That I don't want to be seen in that way, right? And so that we have to, in the field of coaching, get better and better at thinking systemically, seeing systems everywhere. Nothing happens in isolation.
That's right.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And kind of along that same line, we've seen a rise in the number of companies who hire internal coaches. And I think, when we think about internal coaches and systems, they are so aware, right, of that. When you're internal, you're more aware of what are the systems that you're dealing with. What role do you see internal coaches playing in developing our current and future leaders in organizations?
Well, Pam, I will take a stab at this, and then I'll let you talk. I could see you want to say something. Yeah. You want to go ahead?
No, you go.
I will just say, so it's not every organization that is in a position to train or hire a bunch of internal coaches, right? It's a great luxury to be in an organization where that's even a possibility.
Yeah.
And so, select few organizations that are doing this. Some are doing it really well. I think that internal coaches are a way of institutionalizing development within an organization. So I go to the cultural, right? Sort of the system view. You have coaching happening. Everybody sees it. They know these coaches are walking around or zooming around, whatever they're doing. And I think that that's just a good thing because we've normalized that all leaders have ways to grow and develop, and everybody sees it and appreciates it, hopefully. So I love that. It's obviously going to expand the number of hours of coaching and development happening in an organization. And as you say, those internal coaches get what's happening in those organizations. There are 2 sides to that coin. So it makes the job extremely difficult. There are traps and ethical complexities everywhere you go as an internal coach. But I think when navigated effectively, there's a tremendous amount of impact that they can have. It's not the be-all, end-all, but it's a huge resource.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't add much more than that. I think that all of that is spot on, and I agree that I think the job of an internal coach is a tough job because there are all these boundaries that have to be managed constantly. So I think that it has that tremendous upside, but it's hard work.
Yeah.
Complicated.
Yeah.
I'd say that there are, because I do internal coaching, but I'd say it's difficult to follow my model precisely. I would love to be able to. Absolutely. I do embrace the methodology. It's hard sometimes to make it completely work in an internal setting, but I'm never going to stop trying, and I have hope that someday we're going to be at a point where the organization doesn't have to be consistently convinced that there's value in internal coaching, because I think that is one of the hard parts, is getting everybody to embrace something like that. But yeah.
Yeah. I think headway is happening on this front, though. Do you agree with that, Michael?
I do, and I was going to go a slightly different place. I actually think it's also true with external coaching into organizations where the organization still, each organization will have its own idea of what they want to have happen in that coaching. And some will look like the methodology that we have been trained in, or some might look a little bit different or quite a lot different. And so I think it just raises an interesting point, Tricia, of how do we adapt to the expectations of a specific organization, and really honor what we know is important about the process, but then also be flexible enough that we can fit to a different context.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. That's what's on my mind most days that I have coaching, actually.
It's tough, yeah.
So, Michael, what are a few practical steps that leaders can take for themselves and their teams to move into a more developmental leadership model? And then, Pam, would you please add to that?
We're going to hold that conversation right here. And we'll be back for the rest of the conversation with Dr. Pam McLean and Michael Hudson next week. Tune in.